Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Next thing you know, they'll let an American run for prime minister here. I'd be willing to serve. I'm just saying now that the rules have changed. No, actually, in addition to presenting the film here today, I've been sent to Canada to return Mr. Scheer to the United States. It's sort of a catch and release program that we've got going. We keep our neighbors to our south out, but we come into Canada to bring back errant Americans who want to renounce their American citizenship. You understand our mentality, right? Nobody renounces us. And he just found out a couple days ago. First of all, you just found out he's an American. It's like, there used to be a saying in our country that anybody could grow up to be president, and nobody ever believed it until 3 years ago. But this puts a whole new twist on it. Any American can grow up to be prime minister of Canada. It's like you're going to have an election entitled "The American versus Aladdin." Advantage Aladdin. I am really honored to be here today. I had never been to Vancouver before until 30 years ago this week. And I was finishing Roger and Me. It was my first film. I didn't go to film school. I barely went to school. I dropped out after a year of college. I think it was a commuter campus in Flint, and you had to drive there. And the first day of my sophomore year, I drove around for an hour looking for a parking spot, and then I just said, "Fuck it, I'm dropping out." And it's a true story. I went home and told my parents I'm dropping out of college, and they said, "Whoa, no, why?" Couldn't find a parking space. It's like that's not a reason. It's so funny when I think about that backstage, just that how different my life would have been had some Chevy Impala just pulled out. And I got that spot. But lucky for me, I guess, that happened. So I didn't know how to make a movie, but I liked the movies. And I went to a lot of movies. And I didn't like documentaries. I found them, like most normal people, boring. And I don't know if it was some exchange program across the river to Sarnia or Windsor, but we tended in Michigan to watch a lot of National Film Board of Canada documentaries. You're so fortunate to have something like that. We don't have that. And there were just wonderful, 2-hour-long documentaries on beavers. But one of the great things about growing up on the border with Canada, and my grandfather was born in Ontario, and my mom's parents or grandparents were born. I forget what it is, but basically my mom was 3/4 Canadian on one parent, and one actual Canadian on the other parent of hers. Isn't that enough for me to get some kind of passport, green card? No, I really don't want to be prime minister. I'll come and I'll behave myself. No, I have to stay because we have some business ahead of us here in the United States. But, and yes, apologies in advance for the last, I was going to say 3 years, but it's more like 300. But so I was making this film in 1989, and it was hard because I had to teach myself how to do this. And when I was getting ready to finish it, I took a video camera. It was on film, so it was a Steenbeck editing machine, and I made a home video of the screen, little tiny screen on the edit thing, and sent it off to the Toronto Festival and Vancouver Festival. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I guess I knew enough that if an American festival or American distributor will not distribute this movie, the Canadians, I know, will at least appreciate the humor in it. And so I sent it off to both festivals, and got an immediate and wonderful response to please come. And so we went to Toronto first, and it won the audience prize there. And then we came here, and it was a really long plane ride. That's one thing I remember. And but it was so wonderful. The people were great. The festival was very filmmaker friendly, and in the response to the film, not just to the humor, but to the politics and to making a different kind of documentary, a documentary that's a movie. And it's what when I am allowed to go to film schools and speak to the students, I encourage those who want to make documentaries not to make documentaries, but to make movies, to honor this art form. That if you just want to make a political speech, you can run for office. If it's a sermon, you can be a preacher. But if it's a movie, people are in here to watch a movie. And I'm sorry, I don't think the Playhouse has popcorn or what are they, Gossettes? Is that what this is here? The Gossettes? So it's Gossettes in English, and in French it's a joke. It's Gossettes in French. My apologies. They just told me backstage too, there are no French subtitles in this film. It's all in English. So this is not my doing. I did not set it up this way. And I just took the French-speaking people in here my sincere apologies. But there's nothing else to say. We're going to come back out here with Mr. Quinn afterwards and have a interesting discussion and hopefully some of your questions. And what I'd like to do actually is afterwards, I've arranged it with a pub here nearby, the Library Square Bar. Do you know where this is? So I'd like to invite you all to the after party. And now, when I mentioned this to the people that run the festival, and I said, oh, by the way, and the first drink is on me. So I'm buying the first drink. And then they said, you know we're Canadian, right? We do drink. I said, yeah, it's one drink. So there'll be, I think when you go there, just bring your whatever ticket or thing on your screen for this. Just go there. I'll be there. And they'll give you... And they'll give you your drink ticket, and you're welcome, of course, to drink more or stay or whatever. But I'd like to meet you and thank you for all these years of support. I won't go through the list of things that I wouldn't have been able to do had not Canadians supported me in my work. Salter Street Films in Halifax helped fund my TV show, The Awful Truth, and they were the only ones who would give me the money to make Bowling for Columbine. So no. So I'm grateful, and my apologies if over the years I've been too effusive about my appreciation for your country. I know it has many problems. You don't need an American to tell you what's messed up here. It's so great when you land here just to turn the news on, because it's such a different experience than. But I'm appreciative of you in the sense that I think we would be better off as Americans if we were more Canadian-like. That if we had your basic ethos, that we operate from the we instead of the me. Now, I know that's not true for all Canadians. I've met the others. They're actually scarier without the guns, if you can imagine that. But I do and have appreciated for a long time, and I think that there's much that you could mentor us on, even though you're probably too humble or too not wanting to do the work to fix us. But with all due respect to Mr. Scheer, I'm guessing all he wanted was some free Canadian health care. And, I can't tell you how many people I know in Detroit that just go across the bridge because they can't afford to get help in Detroit. And the Canadians, know that this is not a Canadian walking in. And first of all, we don't hold the door open for the next person. But you're so easy to spot. But I don't know if he got the not too expensive Canadian education, but his sisters back in the U.S., who are both registered Republicans and voted for Trump. Oh no, come on now. Think of how much fun it would be to have a Canadian prime minister who comes from a family of Trump voters. Yeah. So stick around for the talk afterwards. Join me at the Library Square bar after the talk. And thank you very much for all these years of your support for my work. It's meant a great deal to me. We'll see you afterwards. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Michael Moore. And Mr. Stephen Quinn. Enjoy.
How are you?
I actually regretted sitting in here watching it. I'm sorry to say that. I thought this felt like the best place to watch it again after all these years. It was too hard. And I have attempted to watch it a number of times. I can't really get through it. And I'm like, damn, what is wrong with you? It's so when I just left now while you were all relieving yourselves, well, I'm not ashamed to admit this. I went downstairs and just cried. So I feel better now, getting that out of me. But I think everybody in here is watching it with context, many contexts, the obvious context of what the United States has become, but also what everyone in here knows what Flint means now in the 21st century, and that the people who couldn't get those U-Hauls and get out, who were left behind, ended up being poisoned. And it's not an environmental issue. The water from Lake Huron was clean, and they cut that off because a profit-making venture had convinced many communities in Michigan to buy into a new pipeline they were going to build. And because Flint, the governor of Michigan, had removed the mayor under a new law that allowed the governor to take over a city, because the city was poor and broke. So the new governor signed on to this profit-making pipeline. And while they're building the pipeline, they'd have to take Flint off the port, the Huron, Lake Huron water, and have people start drinking from the Flint River, which is just a cesspool. It's not even, to dignify it by calling it a river is not right. And so you know the rest of the story. And no one's been arrested and convicted yet in the state. And the Republican governor is term limited, so he left in January of this year, but he remained on. And, you know, so every child got lead poisoning. Lead in children, especially under the age of 6, causes permanent, irreversible brain damage. There's no medicine to take. There's no therapy for it. They are damaged for the rest of their lives. And a whole bunch of things happen with that. Most notably, actually, the average IQ goes down 20, 30 points. When they become adolescents, the brain, the way that as your brain matures and as you deal with issues so that anger doesn't rule the day when you're an adult, that whatever that process is in the brain that filters it,
self-regulation,
is not there. And so you have adolescents then who are angry, potentially violent, et cetera. And this never could have happened in Bloomfield Hills or Grosse Pointe or Ann Arbor. It happened because, it could happen because the city is majority black and poor. The white people who are there are very poor. So anyways, so to watch something about Flint, if I were to show this in Flint today, people would look at this as, wow, those were the good old days. Because when I made this movie, General Motors had 80,000 workers in Flint, and we'd lost 30,000 jobs. So when I made this movie, there were still 50,000 people working for General Motors. Today, there's 6,000 left.
On strike as well.
Huh?
On strike.
And on strike,
well.
yes, of course. The first thing that the CEO of GM did when the strike happened a couple of weeks ago was to cut off the health benefits. The CEO is a former resident and the first CEO of GM to have ever worked on an assembly line, and lived in Flint and raised her family in Flint. Yet, did I say her? Yes, she's a woman. Did this to these workers. And so it just all goes part and parcel into the whole thing. And I sat where's my family at somewhere? There you are, okay. We were sitting there and I'm just like, I leaned over to my sister and I said, when Pat Boone says capitalism, praising it, of course, I said, that's the first time that word is used in all of my films. All of these films, to me, are, I hope someday, maybe after I'm gone, that will be seen as a 20-hour movie about how an evil economic system destroyed
the people of a particular country and the country itself and possibly the world. But I was just happy that Pat Boone is the first to utter the C word.
You do see the seeds of all of your later films sort of planted in this film. I mean, this is the first sort of study that, you continue much with the same method, digging into more specific topics as you go. I want to ask, this is a creator talk. Can I just say, I'm way more sad at the end of that than I thought I would be too. When I saw it on screen 30 years ago, I left the feeling with a very different feeling because it's very funny. There are parts of it that are very, very funny. Overall, my recollection wasn't that I would feel awful at the end of it. Is that context? Is that because the context of America and the economic system you talk about has changed over 30 years?
I think, again, part of it is that. I realized sitting there just now why the humor that is in the film was there for me, really, more than for the, I thought for the audience, because I understood that for what I was trying to say in the film wasn't going to work if I just beat people over the head and have them, at the end of the film, be depressed. And, I used to say, in the edit room, we don't want people, the feeling at the end of the film shouldn't be, I need a drink. The irony that we're all going to drink after.
I think it's a pretty good idea, actually,
but I realized that, and I know this just from my own Irish-Canadian American roots, that the humor that I grew up with, I always saw it as the flip side of the coin, that on the other side of the coin were a lot of angry Irish people.
I grew up around them as well.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And I think I learned at an early age, too, that the only way to alleviate this anger and despair and the sort of dark view of the world was either to develop a sense of humor or to drink or both.
Or to put on a Tommy Makem album, I think was the one. That means nothing to people who aren't Irish.
Yeah, if you know any Irish, but I also say this about Canadians, because I saw watching Channel 9 from Windsor, which we could pick up with a simple antenna in Flint, very, very clear signal, that the Canadian sense of humor was not ours. And while these people seemed to look like us, and at least in Ontario, they spoke English and whatever, they weren't us. And that they dealt, I think, with their anger through humor, as did the Irish and the British and the Scots. There is a, if you've traveled at all or you have any friends in other places, you see that the darkness is, we're always trying to lift the darkness from us. And alcohol alone won't work. In fact, it actually doesn't work. It makes it darker. But I think it's also what's kept us alive, and it's kept the fight in us too. And I think that all jokes aside that I said at the beginning here, I'm referring to Canada, I believe that fight is in a lot of people here too. But I think the context that you refer to is because if you are over the age of 50, you grew up in a time in the 60s and 70s where we were absolutely convinced we were going to make this world a better place. We were going to throw out the bums, the people who were making life miserable for all of us, and we were going to leave our kids and our grandkids with a far, far better place. And sitting there in the fifth row of this theater gave me the feeling of a real sense of failure, that that our generation didn't do that. We've left them with a worse planet, no doubt about that. And the sense that we, the hippies, the love and peace generation, didn't succeed. As we now enter our years where we're going to be the elders, has got to be pretty damn depressing to anybody, either watching this film or thinking about how far we haven't gone that we should have been by now. And that, I hope, if anything, because I'm not depressed watching this. I sat there with a fire being lit under me again and a rage that is healthy and productive.
I felt very much the same way. It wasn't just sadness, it was also a lot of anger at the injustice. How do you harness that now?
Non-violently. Yeah. Non-violently. All right, sorry. Yeah,
And specifically, what do you mean?
There was somebody who objecting to the nonviolence, and I can't see him. Oh, okay, all right. He's. Are you American or Canadian?
I'm mother was American, but I'm Canadian.
Okay, all right. Because he said he was apologizing because he couldn't hear me, but then I thought, yeah, but you can go get help. And you need dental too, by the way. Not you personally, but I'm just saying.
It's kind of an issue around here these days.
It's an issue here?
Well, we are, of course, in the middle of a Canadian election campaign. We vote on
Is
October
anybody in
21st.
favor of dental care?
Yes.
Oh. Is there a party?
There is. The New
NDP
Democratic Party is
supports it.
promising to include dental care. The Green Party is as well.
The Green Party is?
Yes.
Okay. What about the Liberals?
No.
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 Yeah, that's a bridge too far for the Liberals.
Universal health care should stop in your mouth. Is my 15-year-old calls his teeth luxury bones.
It's the problems often start in the mouth.
I know.
Right? I mean, it's like, it's so crazy. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a great piece on this like 10, 15 years ago about actually, if we had to choose between dental care or medical care in the U.S., we should first try to get dental care because of all the health problems and economic problems and how capitalism punishes you if you have bad teeth. So if you grow up with bad teeth as an adult, you don't get the better jobs, you make a lot less money. There's all these stats that Gladwell showed that not having a dentist from the time you're a child on is harmful physically, it's harmful economically, et cetera. So, so the NDP and the Green Party support that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
No one knows how it will be paid for.
And I assume the liberals say, how can we pay for it, right? We can't pay for it. We'll have to tax people.
That's
the
pretty
usual
much it.
Hillary Clinton kind of, for my last film, I interviewed her campaign chair, John Podesta, and I said to him, "What is wrong with you people that you just can't say free health care?" Well, we didn't know if we could, we had to show how we could afford it. Or I said, afford it? We're Americans. We don't ever stop to think of, can I afford this? We go to Target every weekend and we buy shit. You're talking to an American public who just buys shit and never thinks about whether we can afford it. You put it on the card. You just say it when you're running. You just say free dental. Trudeau just used to say free dental and worry about it later. If he'll have 3 or 4 years to try to make it happen. If he doesn't, then they'll throw him out then. But at least buy some time. and tell people you're going to fix their friggin' teeth. I don't know what is wrong with these politicians that call themselves liberals.
The excuse I hear...
I said to Podesta, I said, just say it. I want practice right now. Say free healthcare. Say free college. Free college. Say it. I'm sick of losing. Just fucking say it. Trump went to Michigan numerous times, went to Wisconsin numerous times, and he just kept saying, you know, I'm bringing your jobs back. Yeah. That's all you want to hear. I'm bringing your jobs back. And he kept saying, I'm going to tax the hedge fund guys. And everybody would cheer at the rallies. And it's like, it didn't matter whether he meant it. It just mattered that he said it, you know? If I said to this guy over here, I said, sir, you, for your age, you actually look really good. Like for a second right there, you just thought, oh, wow, that's kind of nice. It doesn't matter if it's the truth. I just told 700 people, you look fucking good. That's all that matters. What is wrong with liberals? I'm sorry.
No, and you said this in an episode of Trumpland. You said exactly this, that the reason people voted for him was because he went to the people of Michigan and he said, I am going to put, unless GM or unless the automakers move their plants back to America, I'm going to slap a, 35% tariff on their cars. And the collective, sigh of admiration and joy that went out across all of the workers of Middle America was huge, and that's the reason they would vote for him, and it would feel good for a day, you said.
But right now, I take one day of just feeling good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Not today?
I'll feel better when we go over to the library square.
This is, I have to say, this is a creator talk, and I would love to let you just go on. I mean, do we want to talk about the movie, or do we want to? I have some.
Actually, when I heard, first of all, I love the name Creator Talk.
Yes.
The godlike nature.
You are the creator.
No, it's very. It's not a Canadian word.
No.
So it's like. It has no humility to it at all. I am the creator of this movie. But it just made me think of something too. So I was watching one of your channels last night, and on came a commercial for a company called, I think it's called Medipack, and it's so polite. They're probably worried that Americans will see these ads when they visit here, but it's all about when you travel to the States, you must get a private healthcare plan for the days or weeks you're going to be in the States.
Yes.
Because your BC health card is not going to cover you if you get into some serious shit down there. So how many of you, when traveling to the States, have had to get a little, look at this, yes. I wish Americans could see this. It will not enter the United States without extra coverage.
I won't go skiing at Mount Baker for a day without getting extra coverage.
Wow. But the woman on the ad said, and in addition to covering you, if you get sick in the States, in addition to covering you, we'll make sure that we return you safely to your home in Canada. It really makes the United States sound like a leper colony. How will the Canadians get back home? Crawling. Where's my crutches? When I'm on this TV show I had called TV Nation, we did a thing called the Healthcare Olympics. This is in 1993, 94, and we got two sportscasters, Bob Costas and Ahmad Rashad, to do the play-by-play, and this was all real, so it's all documentary, none of it's set up. So I asked 3 hospitals if I could place a camera crew in the emergency room and follow a patient as they go through the process, or as you say, process. And I said, okay, it has to be a broken arm or a broken leg.
Right.
So there's apples to apples in the 3 hospitals. So one hospital was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. One hospital was in Toronto, and one hospital was in Havana, Cuba.
Yes.
And so we, I mean, it took a full day because you're going to get a broken bone in each of these hospitals. We filmed the whole thing from beginning to end, and the end would be the accountant, the cashier as you check out.
Yeah.
How much did this cost you? So the American bill for a broken arm was something like, I don't know, $1,000 and some dollars. In Toronto, it was free for the broken leg, except they made the guy pay $10 for his crutches. This is how they take away your social safety net. One crutch at a time. Oh, it's just crutches.
It's only $10.
It's only 10. Bo doesn't have $10. Canadian. Come on. But in Havana, it was entirely free, including the crutches. So Cuba won. And we filmed this whole thing with Bob Costas, declaring Cuba the winner. We had a medal ceremony, the whole thing. Canada got the silver, and the U.S. shouldn't have even got the bronze. But anyways, I get a call from the censor, who's called Standards and Practices at NBC. And she says to me, "I'm sorry, Cuba can't win." I said, what do you mean? It's Standards and Practices. We cannot have on primetime television in the U.S. you showing Cuba. I said, oh, come on. It's all documentary. It's all verified. Yeah. They won. No. We had this fight for a couple of weeks. They would not air it. And finally she says, look, we're either going to kill the piece or you're going to change it to Canada winning. So I didn't want to kill the piece. So if you ever see it, I think it's online, you'll see Canada winning. You did not win.
How did you get around the $10 for crutches?
How did
How did you justify Canada winning when Cuba was?
How did they justify? And the network said they won. I said that guy had to pay $10 for the crutches. Canada didn't win. Canada, this is a problem with Canada. It's like we're gonna go all the way, except we're not. We're gonna take care of our native people, except we're not. It's just like I don't mean to be critical, but I'm just saying.
No, be critical. Go ahead.
Well, no American should ever open their mouth criticizing Canada for anything. Seriously, you can criticize yourselves and what's going on here. Mm-hmm. You did give your native people a beautiful sheet of ice. I will grant you that. That is a. No, but I don't want to be critical. See, it got quiet. It's like.
So how's everything in America now? Is it everything?
The funny thing.
Going well, is it?
If I had been here the first weekend of this festival, and you'd asked me that,
yes.
I would have said, if the election were held today, I'm sorry to tell you, Trump is going to win again. Mm-hmm. The popular vote, I hate calling it the popular vote. In a democracy, whoever gets the most votes wins. You understand that, right? Okay, well, not in the U.S., as you know.
Not here either.
Well, actually not, yeah. Yes, right. Yeah, I wouldn't want this system either. I'll tell you what I would like, voting on a paper ballot. Mm-hmm. You haven't switched yet to computers, have you? Don't. New Brunswick, them. Always thinking that they're the innovator. All the great Canadian inventions come from New Brunswick. That big Canada arm on outer space, New Brunswick probably claims that's theirs. It's a huge step backward. Don't ever let it happen here. You've seen enough now with us to know never give up the paper ballot and the number 2 pencil. And counting the ballots in the elementary school on the table at 8 o'clock in front of poll watchers from each of the parties. Yeah. That's how you do it. It doesn't take any longer. You're the second largest country on earth, landmass wise. And by 11 o'clock, by 8 o'clock in the Pacific zone, by 11 o'clock back east, you know pretty much, right, who your prime minister is.
Yes, unfortunately.
And you've got to bring those ballots in, but you've got to bring them in from, they're coming in on dog sleds.
There are phones. Then they call the number in.
There are phone lines even way
Yeah.
up. Running water.
What do you think is going on? Unless you live on a reserve. So you're thinking differently now than you were a couple of weeks ago about whether Donald Trump is going to be elected in 2020, and that obviously resulted in the impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, even 2 weeks ago, I thought whoever the Democrat is next year, Hillary won by 3 million votes. The Democrat next year will win by 4 to 5 million. There's no doubt about that. No about that. Well, yes, I mean, Bernie most resembles my personal politics. And I like, Elizabeth Warren, I filmed her for the first time back in 2005 for Sicko, and then for Capitalism, a Love Story, she appeared again. So I was, I've known her for a long time and impressed, and I wish that she would quit saying that I'm a capitalist to my bones, because you're not. I mean, if you're thinking Adam Smith capitalism, maybe, where he said that capitalism wouldn't survive if it didn't have a moral core to it, if it didn't take care of people.
Right.
But that's not what we live in now. We live in a very greedy system that they keep calling. They call it capitalism. But so I'm disappointed that she uses that word because she knows better. And Bernie just doesn't give a shit. He's just going to say whatever he thinks and feels, and
Why?
And it was a heart attack. Did you hear that this morning?
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. Why was this the thing? Why was a phone call to Ukraine the thing that finally got the Democrats to do this? Why wasn't it, I don't know, putting kids in cages or lying about everything or gross mismanagement, or why was it this?
Or being a sexual predator.
Oh, there's that, yeah.
It was already reaching a tipping point, but I think that the Ukrainian phone call is so easy to understand, and you watch enough of our TV to know that if you explain it in a matter that's easy to understand, people get it. You know this about us, okay? That we're good people. We are. You've met enough of us to know that we're decent people. We might be slower learners than you are. I remember whenever we go to visit our Canadian relatives near London, Ontario, and we were always like, oh no, because it would be so bored while we were there because their walls were lined with books. And they read so many books here. But but we are when we finally get it, when we finally realize that we've been lied into invading Iraq, right? Bush gets elected in 2004, but in the 2006 election, we take over the House and the Senate. Within 2 years, it took a while for Americans. Bush had a 70% approval rating. 70% of the country supported the war. 29 Democrats in the U.S. Senate voted for the war, including Hillary and John Kerry and Joe Biden. And but 2 years later, 2 years after the 2004 election, that was the beginning of the end for them. And 2 years after that, a country that still is quite racist in many ways, did something that you won't do in my lifetime, elect a black person as the president of the United States. That I would live long enough to see that in such a country filled with millions of vile, racist people was had a profound impact. And if there's any Americans in here that, okay, security. I'm just saying that that night in 2008, everybody was seriously moved that things would be better. It's why, if I could just skip ahead to now, that when those first photographs of Justin Trudeau appeared a few weeks ago, people, everybody, friends of mine, people in the U.S., the non-racist people, the good people, the majority, were crushed, absolutely crushed, because the way we see him is out at the airport welcoming refugees. The way we see him is having that lunch with Obama in the diner. That once we went from Obama to Trump, the level of despair, but also envy toward you, that you had him, not a hater, and that we are going to have to live with this. So when that happened, it was pretty, it's like you just, I mean, my first thought actually was, what is wrong with white people? I mean, no, serious. But, you know, and I mean, he explained it. He said, I'm a person of privilege. I was raised with white privilege. And where I don't think at that age you would have done that. I certainly wouldn't have done that. But, you know, this is a guy that got elected because he beat the crap out of somebody in the ring. You know, I mean, you elected a guy who loves snowboarding. I mean, there's the yin with the yang here. I mean, you get a lot of good, and then you get the other stuff that you want to maybe turn away from. But
we'll find out on the 21st whether there's any coming back from that. Do you think there's coming back from that? Do you think that it's over for him as a result of that?
It's hard for me to say. I don't live here. Yeah. And you have racial issues here.
But not the history.
You don't have that history. Yeah. That particular history. So I don't know. I think if I lived here, obviously, I'd vote for the guy who actually wears a turban, because that's his belief in his life. But you see, just saying that, I thought, you know, we don't like it, almost Americans don't like it when people interfere with our elections. So for me to sit here and try to even say anything about yours doesn't quite feel right. Right. But I appreciate the irony that we, as far as interfering in elections, we are the inventors. We are the origin story of our CIA manipulating elections all over the world for decades. And when someone's democratically elected, staging coups or assassinations to take them out. So for us to get our underwear in a bunch over the fact that the Russians or whatever, messed around with us in 2016, yes, of course, nobody should be messing with our elections. But let's, at the same time, just remind people that we came up with that idea first. So
I do want to open this up to questions from the audience. We have just a few minutes to do that. We have people with microphones, and I will, as judiciously as possible, choose the people. So if you'd like to raise your hand, someone with a mic will come to you. We'll just take front and center here first if we can.
I forget if it was MSNBC or on Bill Maher, you had predicted a year or two before the election that Trump had a huge possibility, and you were laughed at.
I was laughed at and booed, and I didn't say he had a huge possibility. 6 months before the election, I said that Trump is going to win, and he's going to win by winning Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, 3 blue states. So I think at the casino, when you're able to actually call, not just say win, but call the 3 states, you get something for that little.
So my question is, what are
I got
people?
nothing, but I never wanted to be more wrong. I mean, that's just, it was an awful thing to say and upset people. But I was trying to tell them, don't take this for granted. Just because she's one of the smartest people ever to run for president of the United States doesn't mean anything, because this guy knows how to read a room and sell what he's selling to an unsuspecting audience.
So my question is now, what are people laughing at you for now that you think they'll be biting their tongue about?
You did predict the 2018 midterms would have the greatest turnout in a century, and they did. And you've also called Donald Trump the last president of the United States.
I stole that from Stephen Colbert, just to be
But that was a comment. I mean, that was a comment on the fragility of democracy.
It's very fragile, and democracies don't last. And if we have this attitude that it's always going to be with us, or that the Constitution, the sacred Constitution, is going to protect us. Your question, though, about what are they laughing at now, or what don't they want me on the air to talk about? This is a recurring problem with me, and the Democratic Party works overtime. Various people who work as adjuncts to the Democratic Party or leadership of the Democratic Party do their best to try to keep me off TV, try to put it out there that, this is not good for us to have me out there. I met with Steve Bannon last year privately. I wanted him to appear in my film, Fahrenheit 11/9, and explain how they figured out how to win the election by losing it. Because I know no liberal could ever figure out how can we get less votes by the millions, but still be given the keys to the Oval Office. No liberal I know is smart enough to figure that out. So I wanted to know how the evil geniuses, figured that out, how they pulled that off. I could not convince him to go in front of the camera, but I spent an hour and a half with them. And he said to me, I want to tell you something. I was before you went to Toronto with Roger and me, there's this little festival, Telluride, that's kind of an exclusive thing. It's not really open to the public. It is and it isn't, And he said, I was there for the very, very first screening of Roger and me. I sat right behind Roger Ebert. I said, where was it? He goes, Mason's Hall. I said, you were in the room? I was just 2 rows behind you. This is 30 years ago. And Steve Bannon is sitting there. I said, well, what? He said, honest to God, I walked out of there so upset. I'd always thought that the populist revolution in the United States would come from the right. And I walked out and I found a phone booth, because we didn't have phones back then. And I called a friend back in D.C., and I said, you're not going to believe what I just saw. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to us. The populist revolution is going to come from the left in the U.S. And I just met the guy who's going to lead it. He's just, some guy from Flint, Michigan. And he said, I just went on and on about, I was just so depressed for days. And never did I think that the Democratic Party would do our work for us and try to marginalize you, not listen to you. Our greatest gift really in 30 years has been that the Democrats have never listened to you, because you've been right on all these issues. You were right. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You were right. General Motors and the industrial way that things were running was going to collapse. Everything you've said, and each time you do it, they fight you. And it was hard to listen to that, because I knew the truth of it. Beto O'Rourke, 3 weeks ago at the debate in Houston, looks into the camera and says, we're going to take away your AR-15s and your AK-47s. The very next hour, the Democratic Party was dispatching pundits to be on all the talk shows for the next morning to walk back what he said, because they thought, oh my God, we're going to lose the election. He told everybody we're going to take your guns away. And so they put Democrats out there trashing Beto O'Rourke for what he said. But if you watch the debate, when he said it, it's the only moment in the debate when the entire audience rises to its feet and cheers him. And in Texas. But the Democratic Party doesn't even know its own country, doesn't even know its own people, and wanted to trash Beto O'Rourke, and they did for the next week. But you see, the Democrats are idiots in this way. And here's who's not idiots: corporate America. Within a week, Colt Manufacturing, Colt Guns, announced they were discontinuing selling the AR-15 to the public. It was like, wow. I know why. He said it. No Democrat had ever dared to say it. Once it gets said, that's where the avalanche starts. Somebody has to burn the first draft card. Somebody has to burn the first bra. Somebody has to be the first person to walk down from one end of the mall at Sears all the way down to JCPenney's, holding the hand of the person you're in love with, who just sadly happens to be of your gender. Whoever did that for the first time in whatever town you're in, shitting bricks the whole way, thinking someone's going to come up and clobber them. Somebody has to do it. Beto said it. Once the genie's out of the bottle, and Colt knew this, they said, fuck, we better give them something, or they're going to come for all our guns. So let's give them this. That'll shut the conversation down. So smart. And the Democrats, all they were thinking of is the sorry election they thought they were going to lose because they're fellow Americans who they don't even know. Let me tell you who the American people are. You think we're a nation of gun nuts? Yeah. 78% of Americans do not own a gun. 78%. There are 300 million guns in people's homes. But the Washington Post did this study, and they found out that 3% of the American public owns over 150 million of the guns are owned by just 3%. Now that's some scary shit, because 3% have built an arsenal for what they perceive to be the coming Civil War. But the truth is, our fellow Americans they're not even gun owners. Of course they stood and cheered to get rid of the AK-47s and the AR-15s. The fact, you haven't started this in Canada, have you, where your kids go through active shooter drills? Have you started this here?
They're not called active shooter drills, but we do have lock-up practice in classrooms and codes.
Stop. It's the worst thing to put a 7 or 8-year-old through. What are you telling them? You know, it's so wrong on so many levels. It's the first step to acquiescing to the fact that, well, you know, we live in a violent society, so we better prepare the kids. Well, how about this idea? One of the kids who's going through the active shooter drill is the potential future shooter. So for years, did I say he?
You did.
He has watched how the active shooter drill works. He knows where the hiding places are. He knows the drill. He knows the whole deal. You know, we used to do tornado drills. The tornado didn't know.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Okay, my other answers will be shorter because I'd like to fit in as many questions as possible.
I'm getting told that's the end of the question period, unfortunately.
In a free society, there can't be just one question.
We've already heard enough from the Canadian American guy here, down here. You, ma'am. There's a good closer. Who's going to be the next president of the United States?
If there's a microphone at the bar, I'll take a few more questions. They'll be better with alcohol. So, who's going? I don't know. Who would win tonight? I don't know. You know who I would like to win of the ones that are running, but for the question is, how can we guarantee? Because I believe Bernie will beat Trump, Elizabeth can beat Trump, Kamala Harris can beat Trump, Biden can beat Trump, Buttigieg could probably beat Trump. I think there's a number of people that can beat him, but Hillary beat him. Beating him is not the point. Beating him is not enough. He has to be crushed, and I mean crushed. So who is the American that would crush him tonight? And I think there's one very obvious person to me, and her name is Michelle Obama. She would, people love Michelle Obama. She would crush him. And I know you're thinking, well, she doesn't want to go back there. But you know what? When your country is in danger, you have to serve. Wouldn't each of you, if Canada was under some sort of threat, wouldn't you, okay, you're not fit to go into the army or whatever, but wouldn't you take, if your government asked you to use your skill to protect Canada from the United States, who wouldn't in here do whatever you could do? And I know this sounds awfully arrogant of me to say to Michelle Obama, because she's given so much, but she just has got to go back for 4 years and run things, and you only have to do one term. So, the kids are raised, they're off to college. We'll all eat vegetables. I'm willing to commit to so much right now. Vegetables for Michelle. I would put my name at the top of the donor list for a pancreas for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I've lived long enough. I've had a good life. She has to live till 2021. There's no way around it. I don't know. But no, I want to live. Actually, I take
that. I don't want to cut you off mid-sentence, but we have to wrap it up. And
so, how do we? What's the deal on going to this bar?
It's kitty corner. How are you going to figure out? Because it's not going to fit everybody.
Everybody gets a drink ticket there. Yeah. And if too many show up, we'll all take turns wandering in and out of the door, right? All right.
Michael Moore, ladies and gentlemen.
Quinn, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.